Welcome to the Depth Dive. This session is really built for you, digging into some incredibly powerful source material. We're looking at Stephen Covey's landmark work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
That's right. And our mission today, it's really to pull out the core insights about personal effectiveness from this material, and crucially, to understand the fundamental inside-out approach it proposes.
Yeah, that inside-out idea for making genuine, lasting change in your life and your relationships.
Exactly. And what's striking right away is how this source frames the problem. It suggests that, a lot of the deep, painful issues people face.
Even people who look really successful on the outside.
Right. Those issues often aren't solved by quick fixes. They seem to stem from something much deeper, something inside.
Okay, so what kind of issues are we talking about here?
Well, the material lists quite a few common frustrations, things many of us can probably relate to. Maybe your career's going great, but your family life feels like it's falling apart.
Or getting stuck in that cycle of trying diets that just don't work.
Yeah, or maybe it's struggling with motivating people at work or connecting with your kids, that feeling of being constantly overwhelmed by your schedule.
Or just feeling like you're searching for more meaning, something deeper than the day-to-day.
And then there are those tricky interpersonal things too, like feeling that pang of jealousy when someone else gets promoted or recognized.
Or maybe needing to control every interaction. Or looking at a long-term marriage and realizing, well, the spark's just gone. It feels flat.
Right. All these different challenges, according to this source, often point back to the same fundamental issue.
Wow,
We're applying superficial solutions, Band-Aids, really.
to problems that are actually much deeper foundational issues.
Exactly. So the material makes this compelling case that we need a fundamentally different approach, not starting with behaviors or techniques.
But starting deep within, that's the inside-out perspective you mentioned.
That's the one.
Okay, inside out. So where does this whole idea even start? The source material kicks off with a really personal story from the author's own life, trying to help his son, I think.
Yes, and it's a powerful place to begin. He talks about his young son who was really struggling, academically, socially, even physically, coordination-wise.
And he and his wife were trying everything, right? Genuinely trying to help.
Absolutely. Coaching him, encouraging him, using positive reinforcement, even trying to sort of shield him from the embarrassment they saw him experiencing.
Like showing him the right way to hold a baseball bat, or maybe praising him way over the top for tiny improvement.
That kind of thing. Or stepping in when other kids laughed.
Yeah.
They were focused on fixing the behavior, on the external stuff.
On doing things differently, applying techniques, managing the situation.
Precisely. But at the same time, the author was doing research into perception, things like expectancy theory, the Pygmalion effect.
How our expectations of others can actually influence how they perform.
Exactly. And that's where it clicked for him. They suddenly realized their efforts weren't working because, despite all their actions, their own perception of their son was the real problem.
So deep down, they saw him as inadequate, as needing fixing.
That's the core of it. They were seeing him as somehow less than. They were operating from a faulty map of who he was and what he truly needed.
Wow. So they were trying to change his reality, but their view was skewed.
And that led to this fundamental insight. If you really want to change a situation effectively, you often have to start by changing yourself.
And to change yourself effectively, you need to change how you see things, your perceptions.
That's it. You have to change your perception.
Perceptions, okay. And this is where the source brings in the concept of paradigms.
Right. Paradigms. The source defines them as our models, our theories, assumptions, frames of reference. Basically, the fundamental ways we see, understand, and interpret the world.
Our internal maps of reality.
Exactly. And the source uses that brilliant analogy. The map is not the territory. A map is just a description. It's an attempt to represent reality.
So if you're trying to navigate Chicago, but you're using a map of Detroit.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how positive your attitude is, or how hard you try, or how carefully you follow that wrong map.
You're still going to get lost or end up somewhere you didn't plan to be.
Right. It highlights that it's not just about effort or outward behavior if the fundamental map you're using is just wrong. Yeah. Or incomplete.
That makes so much sense. The underlying view dictates the outcome.
And the key insight here is that our attitudes, our behaviors, they flow directly out of these paradigms, these internal maps.
So the way we see things is the ultimate source of how we think and how we act.
It's the foundation.
And to really drive this home, the source mentions that classic visual demonstration the picture that can look like either a young woman or an old woman.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect illustration.
Okay.
It shows how two perfectly sincere, clear-headed people can look at the exact same data,
Huh?
literally the same black lines and white spaces,
Let's see something completely different.
completely different, based purely on their prior conditioning. Which image they were shown first, even for a few seconds, shapes the paradigm they bring to the combined image.
Wow. And if a few seconds can do that, imagine a lifetime of conditioning
Yeah.
from family, culture, media, our own experiences.
It shapes our paradigms incredibly powerfully, often without us even realizing it.
So the big takeaway here is trying to change just the outward stuff, the attitudes and behaviors, without looking at the underlying paradigms.
It's fundamentally flawed. It just doesn't work long term. The source uses this really vivid metaphor. It's like hacking at the leaves of evil.
Instead of striking at the root.
Exactly. You have to get to the root cause. And that root cause is often internal. It's the paradigm.
Okay, striking at the root. That makes me think. The author didn't just pull this inside-out idea out of thin air, did he? He mentions researching like 200 years of success literature.
He did. And he found a really significant shift in focus over that time.
What was the shift?
Well, for roughly the first 150 years of that period, the focus was overwhelmingly on what he labels the character ethic.
Character ethic. And that was
Yeah.
centered on like timeless principles.
Exactly. Things like integrity, humility, fidelity, temperance, courage, justice, patience, industry, simplicity, modesty, the golden rule. Deep foundational qualities.
Benjamin Franklin's autobiography is mentioned as a prime example of this focus.
Yes. The character ethic essentially taught that true sustainable success and real happiness come from integrating these core principles deeply into your character. It was about who you were at your core.
Okay. But then something changed after World War I, you said.
Yeah, there was a noticeable shift towards what the source calls the personality ethic.
Personality ethic. How's that different?
Success started being seen more as a function of personality, public image, skills, techniques. Basically, how you present yourself and manage interactions.
So things like focusing on human relations techniques or just maintaining a positive mental attitude? PMA.
Right. Those became much more prominent. And look, the source isn't saying those things are inherently bad,
Yeah.
but the critique is that the personality ethic often becomes superficial. It focuses on image and technique over substance. It offers quick fixes.
Like the social band-aids and aspirin analogy.
Exactly. They might mask symptoms or give temporary relief for acute problems, but they leave the underlying chronic conditions completely untouched. It's about looking good, not necessarily being good.
And he realized his own efforts with his son. They were maybe falling into that personality ethic trap.
That's the connection he made. He worried he was operating from that perspective, perhaps subconsciously seeking some kind of social mileage or validation from his son's outward behavior.
Instead of addressing the deeper issue of his own perception and his own motives.
Right. The source argues really powerfully that real, lasting success, especially in long-term relationships, requires deep integrity, fundamental character strength.
There's that quote, "What you are shouts so loudly."
In my ears that I cannot hear what you say.
Right.
Yes. It captures that gap perfectly. You just can't fake character over the long haul. People sense the reality eventually.
That really hits home. So if the personality ethic, focusing only on behavior, is a quick fix that ultimately fails,
Yeah.
how do you actually make that deep fundamental change? How do you strike at the root?
Well, it often begins with what the source calls a paradigm shift.
Okay, a paradigm shift, like an aha moment.
Exactly. That sudden experience where you see the world or a specific situation completely differently, often dramatically differently.
The source gives examples from science, right? Like Ptolemy to Copernicus realizing the Earth wasn't the center of the universe.
Or Newtonian physics giving way to Einsteinian physics.
Yeah.
Or understanding germ theory instead of blaming bad air for disease. Huge shifts in fundamental understanding.
Yeah, those are massive. But are there more personal examples?
Oh, absolutely. And the most compelling one in the source material, for me anyway, is that subway anecdote.
Yes, the father with the disruptive kids on the train.
Right. The author describes feeling really irritated. These kids are running wild, making noise, bothering people, and the father's just sitting there, eyes closed, seemingly oblivious.
So the author's initial paradigm is, this guy's an irresponsible, inconsiderate parent. He's judging him.
Totally. He's annoyed. But then he finally speaks to the father, maybe a bit judgmentally, and the father kind of snaps back to reality and says, "Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago."
Oh, wow.
And instantly, The author's entire feeling changes. His irritation vanishes. He's filled with compassion. He doesn't have to try to feel differently.
It just happens because his paradigm shifted from irresponsible parent to grieving man in shock.
Exactly. That story just beautifully illustrates the power of a paradigm shift. Changing how you see the situation instantly, almost effortlessly, changes your attitude and your behavior.
It's quantum change, not just tweaking things.
Right. And it reinforces that idea of striking at the root. Changing your fundamental understanding, your perception, is where the real leverage is.
So changing our vision, how we see, requires investing in who we are, our character, because how we see and how we are, they're deeply connected.
Yes, absolutely. Seeing and being are intertwined.
Okay, so if we're shifting away from paradigms based on, say, faulty conditioning or the personality ethic, what should we be shifting towards?
This is where the source introduces the principle-centered paradigm, and it makes a really crucial distinction here.
Which is?
Principles are not the same as values. Values are internal, they're subjective. They're like our personal maps. A group of thieves, for example, could share the value of honesty among ourselves.
But that doesn't make it a universal principle. So principles are...
Principles are the territory. They're described as natural laws that govern human effectiveness and happiness. They exist whether we believe in them or not.
Like laws of nature, like gravity.
Kind of. They're described as real, unchanging, universal across cultures and time, self-evident. Like lighthouses on a coastline. You don't break the principles, you break yourself against them if you ignore them.
Okay, give me some examples of these principles.
Things like fairness, integrity, honesty, human dignity, service, quality or excellence, potential, growth.
So these aren't just nice ideas. They're presented as fundamental truths about how things work most effectively in the human dimension.
Exactly. They have universal application. And the core insight is that aligning our personal maps, our values, our paradigms with these objective principles, with the territory, is essential for genuine effectiveness and lasting happiness.
So trying to build a life or relationships based on their opposites, unfairness, deceit, mediocrity.
It just doesn't work in the long run. You can get short-term gains sometimes, maybe, but it's not sustainable. It violates the underlying laws of effectiveness.
Okay, so we need to center ourselves on principles, be open to paradigm shifts. But how do we actually do that? It sounds like, well, like a lifelong journey, not just flipping a switch.
It absolutely is a process. And the source talks about the principles of growth and change. It highlights that life, development, it's sequential. You can't skip steps.
Like how babies learn to walk. They have to turn over, then sit up, then crawl, then stand.
Exactly. You can't force a baby who can barely sit to suddenly run a race. We accept this sequential process for physical development.
But the source argues we often try to shortcut it in other areas, like emotional development or character building.
Yes, we want the quick fix. And the author shares another personal anecdote about his daughter's third birthday party that illustrates this perfectly.
Right, the scene where she's just opened all her presents and she's clutching them, not wanting to share.
And he feels that social pressure. Everyone's watching. He wants her to share. So he tries reasoning with a 3-year-old.
Which probably doesn't work.
Right. Then he tries bribing her. Then maybe threatening some consequence.
Still no luck.
Still clutching the presents. So finally, he resorts to using his position, his size, his authority, basically borrowing strength to physically make her hand over some presents to the other kids.
Okay, so he got the result he wanted in that moment. She shared.
He got temporary compliance. He got the P, the production, the desired outcome in that instant. But the source points out, what did he do to the PC?
PC production capability. What's that?
Production capability. In this case, the PC is the relationship with his daughter, her sense of trust, her internal motivation to share genuinely. By forcing her, he damaged the PC.
Ah, I see. Borrowing strength from your position or authority actually builds weakness. It makes the other person rely on external pressure, not internal motivation, and it harms the relationship.
Precisely. And it makes you reliant on having that external authority, too. The contrast is relying on intrinsic strength, patience, understanding, love, and allowing for natural growth.
Recognizing that maybe possessing something fully often comes before genuinely wanting to share it, especially for a young child.
Right. And knowing there are times to teach and times not to teach, especially when emotions are running high. Trying to force a lesson then is usually just about control, not growth.
And this circles back to that earlier point. The way we see the problem is the problem. His paradigm in that moment was focused entirely on the outward behavior, the social expectation.
Not on his daughter's developmental stage or the long-term health of their relationship, the PC. applying those quick fix personality ethic approaches to complex human development. It just doesn't work. It often makes things worse underneath.
So the solution isn't more force, more techniques.
It's that inside-out approach we started with. It means starting with yourself, focusing first on your own paradigms, your character, your motives.
Okay, break that down. Give me some practical examples.
If you want a happier marriage, be the kind of person who generates positive energy. Be understanding, be loyal, be affirming. Don't just demand it from your partner.
If you want employees you can trust.
Then be trustworthy yourself. Be consistent, be fair, keep your commitments.
If you want kids who are more responsible.
Then be a more responsible, patient, consistent, loving parent. Model it, live it.
It sounds like it's about being the change you want to see in the world, or at least in your immediate environment, not just talking about it or demanding it.
That's a great way to put it. And this leads to a core idea in the material. Private victories must precede public victories.
Private victories, public victories.
Private victories are about achieving self-mastery, developing your character, your integrity, your independence, getting your own act together, essentially.
And public victories.
Those are about achieving effective interdependence with others, building strong relationships, teamwork, cooperation, synergy.
So you can't really have successful public victories, effective relationships, without first achieving those private victories.
That's the argument. How can you build deep trust with others if your own foundation of integrity is shaky? How can you truly collaborate if you haven't developed personal responsibility and self-discipline first?
It's sequential, like learning to walk before you run.
Exactly. You can't harvest the fruits of collaboration and trust before you've planted and nurtured the seeds of personal character and reliability. You have to get your own house in order.
That makes perfect sense. You build from the inside out. And this leads directly into how the source defines effectiveness itself, right? Using this principle called the PPC balance.
Yes, the PPC balance concept is absolutely fundamental, and it's illustrated so simply and powerfully with the old fable of the goose and the golden egg.
Right. The goose lays one golden egg a day.
The golden eggs are P production, the desired results. Wealth, in this case. The goose itself is PC production capability, the asset that produces the results.
And the farmer gets greedy.
He gets impatient. He wants all the eggs now, so he kills the goose to get them all at once.
And finds nothing inside.
Yeah.
And now he has no more goose and therefore no more golden eggs.
Exactly. He destroyed the asset, PC, in his excessive focus on the results.
P. That fable perfectly illustrates the core idea. True effectiveness isn't just about maximizing production right now.
It's about maintaining the balance between getting the results and nurturing the asset or resource that produces those results. That's the PPC balance. If you only focus on P, you wear out the asset, you kill the goose. You get short-term results, maybe, but you destroy your long-term capacity.
But the reverse is also true, right? If you only focus on the goose, pampering it, feeding it gourmet meals, but never actually collect any eggs.
That's not effective either. You're not getting the desired results. True effectiveness lies in that careful, ongoing balance between P and PC, production and production capability.
And the source says this applies everywhere, not just to geese.
Everywhere. Think about physical assets. Your lawnmower, your car, even your own body.
Okay, how does it apply to my car?
Well, P is using the car, getting transportation. PC is maintaining it, oil changes, tire rotations, tune-ups. If you only focus on driving it hard and never maintain it, PC, you'll run it into the ground pretty quickly.
Right. But if I only ever maintained it, kept it pristine in the garage PC, and never drove it P, it wouldn't be very useful either.
Exactly. Same with your body. You balance activity and work, P, with rest, good nutrition, exercise, PC. Neglect PC, and your health, your P capability, declines.
Okay, what about financial assets?
It's the same principle. P is the income or interest you get from your capital.
Yep.
PC is the capital itself, the principal.
So living off the interest P while preserving the principal PC is balanced.
Right. But if you start constantly dipping into the principal, invading your savings for short-term spending, P focus, you erode your future ability to generate income, PC.
And investing in yourself, like learning new skills.
That's a huge PC investment. It increases your capacity to earn your financial P in the future.
Makes sense. And this balance must be incredibly important, maybe most important in human relationships.
Absolutely critical. Think about a marriage. P might be getting your own needs met, winning an argument, having things go your way.
And PC.
PC is the relationship itself, the trust, the emotional connection, the goodwill, the communication patterns. Effectiveness means balancing getting your needs met, key, with constantly investing in the relationship, PC.
How do you invest in the relationship, PC?
Spending quality time, showing kindness and consideration, truly listening, apologizing when you're wrong, affirming your partner, those are all PC deposits.
So a purely P-focused approach in marriage, always trying to win or get your way.
It wears out the relationship. It kills the goose. Same in parenting. P might be getting immediate obedience, having quiet kids right now.
And the PC is?
The long-term relationship of your child, their internal sense of responsibility, their trust in you, investing the time and energy to teach, connect, listen, build that trust. That's the PC work.
So just demanding obedience or always giving in to keep them happy, those are unbalanced.
Right. Forcing obedience might get short-term P, but it damages the long-term PC, the relationship and the child's character development. Indulging them constantly might feel like a PC investment, but it hinders their growth towards responsibility.
That Star Wars date anecdote the author shares, that sounds like a great example of a PC investment.
It is. He describes deliberately setting aside time to connect with his teenage son, doing something the son enjoyed, just focusing on the relationship. And the result wasn't just a stronger relationship, PC, but also better communication and understanding later.
And in organizations, at work.
Same principle. Treating employees merely as resources to be squeezed for maximum production, P, is short-sighted. Treating them well, investing in their training, building trust, listening to their ideas, that's investing in the human PC of the organization.
That line about treating employees as volunteers.
Yeah, it's powerful. You can buy someone's hands, maybe their back, for a wage, but you can't buy their heart, their mind, their loyalty, their creativity. That requires PC investment.
You earn that through trust and respect.
Exactly. And remember that story about the manager wanting to shape up lazy employees, their reactive P-focused approach. The source contrasts that with asking the deeper question, who picks up the pieces?
Meaning, what's the impact on morale, trust, turnover the PC when you take that approach?
Precisely. It's like the restaurant owner who watered down the clam chowder to save money, short-term P gain, but drove away his loyal customers, destroying PC.
So this key PC balance, it really is the core of effectiveness in pretty much every area of life. Balancing today's results with tomorrow's capacity.
It's absolutely fundamental, and understanding that principle sets the stage perfectly for understanding the 7 habits themselves. The source describes the habits as moving you along a path, a maturity continuum.
Okay, maturity continuum, what's that?
It describes the progression from dependence, where you rely on others, the you paradigm, you take care of me, you're to blame, to independence.
Independence, the I paradigm. I can do it myself. I am responsible.
Exactly. And then moving beyond that to interdependence, the we paradigm.
Yeah.
We can cooperate, we can combine our talents to achieve something greater together.
And the first few habits are focused on getting to independence.
Yes. Habits 1, 2, and 3 are called the private victories. They are about achieving self-mastery, moving from dependence to independence. You have to win these internal battles first.
Before you can effectively achieve the public victories of interdependence.
Right. And the very first habit, the absolute foundation for all the others, the cornerstone of private victory, is habit 1. Be proactive.
Be proactive. This sounds like it connects back to what we were saying about responsibility.
It absolutely does. It starts with revisiting that uniquely human capacity we talked about. Self-awareness.
The ability to think about our own thoughts, to separate ourselves from our feelings, our moods, even our conditioning.
Yes. It's the ability to step back and examine the lens through which we see the world, to examine our paradigms. The source talks about the social mirror.
How we often see ourselves reflected in the opinions and perceptions of others around us, which can be distorted.
Very distorted. And that social mirror often reflects deterministic theories. The idea that we are simply products of our genetics, or upbringing, psychic determinism, or our current environment and circumstances, environmental determinism.
Basically the idea that we're programmed, like
Right.
Pavlov's dogs, just reacting based on stimulus response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where the source introduces that incredibly profound, almost unbelievable story of Viktor Frankl.
The psychiatrist who survived the Nazi death camps.
Yes. Amidst unimaginable suffering, degradation, the loss of everything, Frankl made a discovery about the fundamental nature of humanity.
What did he discover?
He discovered what he called the last of the human freedoms. He realized that between the stimulus, whatever happens to us, the external events, and our response,
Yeah.
there is a space.
It's the space between stimulus and response.
Yes. And in that space lies our power, our freedom to choose our response. No matter how terrible the circumstances, that freedom to choose your attitude, your response cannot be taken away.
Wow. And how is that choice possible?
It's possible because of those uniquely human endowments we mentioned earlier. Self-awareness to recognize the space, imagination to envision different responses, conscience to connect with principles and values, and independent will to act on that choice unconstrained by stimulus.
So animals react based on instinct or conditioning, but humans, we can choose our response in that space.
That's the fundamental difference. And this is the essence of proactivity. It means more than just taking initiative. It means recognizing that we are responsible for our own lives.
Our behavior is a function of our decisions, not our conditions.
Exactly. We can subordinate feelings to values. We have responsibility, the ability to choose our response. Proactive people aren't driven by conditions, circumstances, or feelings. They're driven by values carefully thought about, selected, and internalized principles.
They carry their own weather, as the source puts it.
That's a great phrase for it. They're not just reacting to the external climate.
It reminds me of those quotes. Eleanor Roosevelt, "No one can hurt you without your consent."
Or Gandhi. They cannot take away our self-respect if we do not give it to them. It's our response, our consent, our interpretation that gives events their power over us.
And this can be tough to swallow, right? Especially if you feel like you've been a victim of circumstances or people.
It can be very challenging. But the source is quite direct. Until you can honestly say, I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, you cannot effectively say, I choose otherwise.
You have to accept responsibility for your current situation to have the power to change your future.
That's the key. Owning your present reality is the first step.
That story about the nurse who had the aha moment, realizing she had been choosing to be miserable in her difficult job.
Yes, that realization, seeing her own choice in the matter, was what unlocked her ability to choose freedom, to choose a different response, even within the same difficult circumstances.
And the source also suggests that these difficult experiences, they don't have to break us. They can actually forge us.
They can be crucibles. Painful, yes. They can forge character, develop internal strength, build resilience. Think of Frankl himself, or Vietnam POWs who endured years of torture but maintained their integrity, or the author's friend Carol who dealt with terminal illness with grace.
It's about finding the highest value in those tough times, which the source suggests is often our attitudinal response, how we choose to face it.
Yes, and being proactive isn't just about our internal response. It's also about taking initiative.
Acting, not just being acted upon.
Right. Recognizing our responsibility to make things happen, not just waiting for things to get better or for someone else to fix it.
I like the example of the job seeker doing solution selling instead of just sending out resumes and waiting.
They proactively research a company's problems and present themselves specifically as the solution to those problems. That's initiative.
Or that simple family phrase mentioned, use your R and I.
Resourcefulness and initiative. It fosters that proactive mindset from a young age. The source really emphasizes the huge difference that simple initiative makes in every area of life.
The story about the home improvement industry group during the recession really highlights this too.
It does. When they focused only on the negative economic stimulus, the recession, the trends, they felt helpless, reactive.
But when they shifted their focus to their proactive response, what could they do? Manage costs better, find niche markets, increase market share.
Their whole perception changed. They started finding opportunities. They felt like business is better than ever, not because the external stimulus, the economy, had magically changed, but because they were causing positive things to happen within their circle of influence.
So organizations can be proactive too, not just individuals.
Absolutely. The collective mindset matters hugely.
And the source gives us a way to diagnose our own default mode by listening to our language.
This is such a simple but powerful tool. Reactive language tends to shift responsibility away from ourselves.
Like saying, that's just the way I am, or he makes me so mad.
Or there's nothing I can do, I can't, I have to. If only. You can hear the determinism in those phrases. External factors are controlling me.
Yeah, it sounds like giving your power away.
It does. Now contrast that with proactive language. Let's look at our alternatives. I can choose a different approach. I control my own feelings. I prefer. I will.
That language reflects choice, agency, responsibility.
It comes from a place of empowerment. Remember the story of the student who initially said he had to go on the tennis trip, feeling forced?
But then realized he was choosing to go because he valued the benefits more than the consequences of skipping his other work.
Exactly. Shifting from "I have to "I choose to" changed his whole feeling about it. Reactive language can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It reinforces the feeling of being out of control.
It locks you into that reactive paradigm.
It really can. And finally, applying proactivity right into the heart of relationships, the source uses that incredibly potent idea: love is a verb.
This really captures the difference between being driven by feelings versus being driven by values, doesn't it?
It does. Think about the anecdote of the man who told the author his marriage felt flat. The feeling of love was gone. He asked, "What do I do?"
And the author's response was simply, love her.
Right. Not try to feel love, but love her, the action. The source explains that love, the feeling, is often the fruit, the result of love, the verb.
So the actions come first. The sacrifice, the listening, the empathizing, the appreciating, the affirming.
Those actions, chosen based on the value of love, often generate the feeling of love. Proactive people understand that love is a choice, a commitment, something you do.
While reactive people are driven by the feeling, if the feeling isn't there, they feel powerless and abdicate responsibility for nurturing the relationship.
Exactly. It's a beautiful summation of proactivity, applying that fundamental choice and responsibility, even in our deepest, most important human connections.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Some really foundational principles about seeing things differently, about PPC balance, about being proactive. How does the source suggest we actually make this stuff stick? Beyond just listening to this deep dive, I mean.
Well, the first suggestion is not to treat this material like a regular book you read once and then put away.
See it more like a companion, something to keep coming back to.
Exactly. A resource for continuous growth.
Mm.
As you grow and face new challenges, you'll likely see deeper layers of meaning and find new applications.
Mm-hmm. And there was that really specific, kind of intriguing suggestion, too, about shifting your role.
Yes. Shift from being just a learner to also being a teacher.
How does that work?
The source recommends reading or engaging with the material with the specific intention of sharing or discussing what you learn with someone else,
Yeah.
ideally within about 48 hours.
Why 48 hours? Why teaching it?
Apparently, knowing you're going to explain it to someone else dramatically increases your focus, retention, and depth of understanding. You have to internalize it more deeply.
It forces you to clarify your own thinking.
Right. Plus, discussing it expands your perspective, you get feedback, and it increases your motivation to actually live the material because you're accountable in a way. And it can even change how others see you as someone who's actively growing.
That's actually really practical advice. Okay, so if someone really commits to this inside-out, principle-centered approach based on this material, what can they realistically expect? Is it instant transformation?
The source is clear. The growth process itself is evolutionary. It's step by step. It takes time and effort. It's not overnight magic.
What?
But the net effect over time can be revolutionary, truly life-changing.
Revolutionary. How so? What kind of changes?
Well, by consistently working on those private victories, habits 1, 2, and 3, starting with proactivity, you can expect to see a significant increase in your self-confidence, a stronger sense of your own identity, your own integrity.
More inner directedness, less swayed by external opinions.
Exactly. You start defining yourself from the inside out, based on your values and principles, rather than letting circumstances or other people define you.
And those public victories we mentioned, habits 4, 5, and 6.
They build directly on that foundation of personal strength. They lead to healing damaged relationships and building much stronger, more synergistic, more fulfilling connections with others.
And habit 7, which we haven't detailed yet, provides the framework for keeping it all going. Renewal.
Right. Continuous improvement and renewal across all areas.
So the core message here isn't that you're stuck with your current habits or reactive patterns.
Not at all. The message is, you are not your habits. You are the programmer, not the program. You have the capacity within you to replace old, ineffective patterns with new, principle-centered ones.
But it takes work. It's not a quick fix.
It takes tremendous effort, especially at first, like breaking free from gravity, the source says. But it also promises immediate payoffs as you practice each habit, even small ones. And the cumulative long-term value is immense.
There's that quote about dearness.
Yes, quoting Thomas Paine, that which we obtain too easily, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only which gives everything its value. This kind of deep change has immense value, precisely because it requires effort and commitment.
Well, you've just done a deep dive into some truly foundational concepts from this powerful source material on personal effectiveness. We started with the profound influence of our own paradigms, our maps of the world.
And move through the importance of principles, the PPC balance for sustainable results. and landed on that fundamental first habit: be proactive, taking responsibility for our choices.
And the central theme, the necessary shift, highlighted again and again, is clear. Real, lasting change has to start from the inside out.
It's the only way to build a foundation strong enough for sustainable effectiveness and happiness.
So let's leave you with this thought to mull over. If, as this material strongly suggests, the highest value you can create, especially in difficult circumstances, lies in your attitudinal response, your chosen response in that space between stimulus and response, how might consciously focusing on choosing your response in your everyday challenges, big and small, fundamentally change not just your experience of those challenges, but maybe the entire trajectory of your life?
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.